So, have you ever dreamt of a child? And this is a legitimate question. And maybe you didn't even necessarily dream it. Maybe you just found yourself somehow daydreaming or had a vision about it. The child in question could have been you, or maybe another figure. And we can even stretch the definition of a child and think of someone small, like a gnome. That counts too. Maybe a similar figure did pop up in your head. But even if it didn't, then you at least probably seen some depictions of such cases in movies or in other media, when the main protagonist of a story has to confront his younger self in some kind of a character development moment, part of the story, right? But what does this figure actually mean? And what does this say about you and your current life circumstance? Or maybe if you didn't even see this figure, then I guess stay tuned, because it's still probably going to be interesting. And I'm going to explain the meaning behind it right now, so just stay tuned and don't open that incognito tab. I know you can do it. Now, for a minute, if we're going to continue talking about the narratives in movies and so on, then we could see that the younger version of the protagonist appears in a couple of instances. The first being that the protagonist is in a situation that somehow reminds him of his past trauma, and so the metaphysical figure of his younger self appears. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is the protagonist reflects back on his life to learn an important lesson, right? Solve a problem, a moral dilemma, or awaken some hidden power within himself to face the challenge in front of him for the sake of friendship and so on. You know what I'm talking about. And even if it just gets cliche as hell, I know you love it, and I love it too. That's the shit. Okay. Now, this would suggest that the appearance of a childlike figure is facilitated by a need to overcome an internal or external challenge. This is when we talk about the movies. Now, something similar happens within us as well. The famous psychiatrist Carl Jung, which I'm mentioning in every video at this point, describes the appearance of a child as a response to contradicting, drastic, and forced change within the individual. So, for example, if your life circumstances somehow force you to suddenly grow up or change in a opposite direction, and you actually go through with it, then the drastic change might be reflected in the child figure, in your dreams or in your visions. The rejection and even repulsion of your previous self for a wide variety of reasons causes the child to haunt you in your dreams. So, for example, if you were like a gamer when you were little, a Xbox Live type of person, just sitting playing your games all day, not engaging with society, not studying, and just not being that productive, and then suddenly your mother or your friends were like, man, you're fucking useless, and it's like, whoa, maybe I am, right? And you just do a 180, you change drastically. And I'm not saying that is bad, obviously, it's probably good, but this sudden change can scorn you in some ways and lead you to develop some issues which then arise within the symbol of a child. So that's that. And just like any subconscious force, to surpass it, you have to integrate it into your conscious awareness and become a more harmonious unit as a result, not rejecting but accepting the previous self. And maybe you can then unlock the powers of childhood, like not having depression or not being an asshole for once. And well, this surprisingly maps really well with how it is portrayed in the media. The protagonist awakens a hidden power by accepting his past self. So thumbs up for that, movies. Hollywood, you're doing something good. For once, not always though. But up until now, we talked about the child as it relates to a one individual, right? To you or to a movie protagonist. But in the work of Carl Jung, the child is an archetype, or something, if you want to explain it, that is universally present in the subconscious of every person, not just you. And so keeping that in mind, archetypes are present in the whole of human subconscious. It would be strange if the symbol of a child would not have some larger significance to society as a whole. I'm not talking about your child, right? Nobody cares about your issues that much, but I'm talking about a bigger range of society as a whole. So just like a person can drastically change from one to another seemingly in an instant, the same goes for humanity as a whole. Now, we can go back in time and think about what kind of change did humanity undergo. And if we're talking about the biggest change of all, it is a change from instinct to consciousness. That is pretty much the biggest change that our species had to undergo. It's actually really fascinating how one day you are driven by your instinct and then suddenly you're just conscious, right? So you're just running around hunting some deer or something and you're just like, bruh, what's life, man? That's probably how the first philosopher sounded like, I guess. So this change, instinct to consciousness, probably happened so fast that it's even hard to comprehend. So just like in the myth of Prometheus, when he brought the fire to humanity, it probably just happened, just as fast. And although this change was relatively recent, we started rejecting our instinctual history of our species extremely quickly. Philosophies and various religions started to bring in their explanations of consciousness and completely, most of the time, rejected the instinctual drives, instead opting for virtue, presentness, and love. So an example would be Stoicism. And if we're talking about religion, then obviously the one that I'm talking about today the most is Christianity. But what happens then? Similarly, suddenly when you were a complete gamer and decided to change, the same happened to humanity. But what is the symbol? A symbol of a child, right? But in the whole of society. This child, this symbol, is been here for quite a while, and usually around this time of recording of this video, which is around Christmas, this figure really pops out a lot. And that is the divine child itself, or, Jesus. Not an image, or change in a person, but in the whole of society. We see him everywhere, right? If we really want to use this stretch of logic, right, that the baby Jesus somehow represents that jump from instinct to consciousness and the rejecting of the previous self or of instinct. If that happened, and this is true, then what does this say about our existence today? Today, even more quickly, we start to reject consciousness and instead only rely on rationality, rejecting the seemingly universal drive for consciousness and the spiritual, and instead going for rationality. You can probably see it even in your day-to-day life, how people just are not really that interested in philosophy even. Usually those things get discarded as, yo, that's bullshit, or man, that's not even interesting. What we really need to go is after science, right? Is this choice rational, right? Do you want to pursue what you want, or do you want to pursue money? And stuff like that. Obviously the rational part of you says go for the money, man. Life is easier and stuff like that. So even in your day-to-day life, you reject consciousness, you reject spirituality and stuff like that. Instead, you go for rationality. And I guess we'll see what kind of child figure results from this. I'm not saying that anything is bad, especially I think that obviously the change from instinct to philosophy is amazing, by the way. So that is just something I really wanted to share because I think it's pretty fucking cool. And I hope you liked it. And that's it. Leave your thoughts below. Let's get discussion going, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and yeah, bye bye.